You didn't land here by mistake. This was meant for you. If you're reading this, it's because something inside you has survived what was meant to break you. And now it's your time to remember who you are. This isn't just another post. This isn't background noise. This is alignment, a spiritual appointment, the message your soul has been quietly craving. You've been carrying so much, questioning your path, wondering if anyone sees the weight you've held together with silent strength. Guess what? You were never forgotten. You were being forged. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not random. You are chosen. And chosen ones don't walk easy roads, but they do walk roads that lead to power, purpose, and impact. Everything you've faced, it wasn't in vain. It was making you into someone unstoppable. And today, something's about to click. So take a breath, shake off the doubt, and lean in. Because the words you're about to receive, they're laced with confirmation, with fire, with truth. You'll feel it in your chest. And by the time you're done, your spirit won't be the same. This is your reminder. You didn't come this far to shrink. You didn't endure the dark to dim your light. You are here to rise, to shine, and to take up space, unapologetically. Let's get into it. You ready? Let's unlock everything they told you wasn't meant for you. Spoiler alert, it always was. They moved forward with the speed of sparks, chasing noise, lights, and applause. You appeared to be idle, untouched by the frenzy. Not from lack of will, but from an unshakable refusal to build on shaky ground. While faces flashed across stages and names echoed in fleeting praise, your hands stayed in quiet labor. The silence wasn't absence, it was alignment. What the world mistook for stillness was depth being carved into your being. You are not here by accident. If you feel the pull, the knowing deep inside that you are chosen, this is your moment. Click the super thank you button and give $50 or more to unlock deeper insights, exclusive content, and a path that aligns with your divine purpose. This isn't just a contribution, it's a declaration, a step toward who you were meant to be. Answer the call, walk with us, and step fully into your destiny. Your journey begins now. This wasn't delay, it was design. A season that didn't reward immediacy, but insisted on integrity. No public progress, yet something sacred was underway. Not molded for haste, you were molded for legacy. What's forming within you refuses to expire. It resists convenience. It demands cultivation. The pace was never punishment. It was preservation. Where others erected towers on soft sand, yours was a slow architecture of soul, one that can weather collapse and still remain. They mastered timing. You mastered trust. They sprinted with certainty. You moved through mystery. But in every silent room, in every unnoticed effort, something irreversible took root. Every unseen effort wasn't forgotten. It was compounding. Hidden seeds took hold beneath the noise. They gained applause. You gained alignment. They chased a rival. You became aware. And when the season turns, what emerges won't flicker with the wind. It won't need to prove. It will carry weight, not just presence. Now comes the moment long in the making, not as a surprise, but as a return. Not because everything finally clicked, but because everything silently aligned. You are not breaking through. You are unfolding, not entering by chance, but by consequence. The stretch made you steady. The waiting made you worthy. What felt like a pause was a preparation. And now, what you carry isn't borrowed, it's built. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. Psalm 126, verse 5. Sometimes God doesn't plant your blessing in sunlight. He buries it in burden. He hides it in heartbreak. And when you're in that midnight hour, when it feels like the silence is too loud and the weight is too much, that's when heaven is closest. That's when the soil is being stirred. See, some people wear their battles out loud, but others, the chosen ones, they carry storms deep in their chest, not because they're weak, but because God built them for more. They were designed to hold what others run from. They weren't called to complain. They were called to carry. And not everyone will understand that. That's okay. They weren't supposed to. Like old trees that twist in quiet forests, the strongest souls grow in solitude. Their growth isn't noisy, it's sacred, it's slow, it's covered. And yes, it's painful, but it's purposeful. That ache you've felt, that weight you've carried for years, that wasn't punishment, that was placement. God was anchoring you so that when the wind blew, you wouldn't break. You were the safe place for others while your own heart was breaking. You spoke life into people while your own soul was starving. And yet, you stayed. You stayed steady. You stayed generous. You stayed faithful. And let me tell you something, beloved. Heaven saw it all. Every silent cry, every midnight prayer, every time you wiped your tears, stood up, and kept moving, even when your spirit felt empty. That wasn't weakness, that was warfare, that was worship. God doesn't just reward public victories, He honors private faithfulness. You don't need a crowd to be called. You don't need a spotlight to shine. What's inside you wasn't built for a stage. It was built for legacy. You sowed in pain. Now, you're about to reap in power. You were broken in silence, but you're about to be blessed in plain sight. This is your confirmation. You didn't go through all that for nothing. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are marked, you are molded, and you are chosen. And your harvest is coming. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. They remained in places that had long lost their warmth. They embraced those who offered sharp edges. They extended forgiveness not for lack of awareness, but from an unwillingness to let bitterness rot the roots. Pain was absorbed, not displayed. But emotion has a way of surfacing, and when it did, it didn't scream. It wept. Each tear was part of a deeper exchange. Not loss, but investment. An invisible labor of transformation. In another realm, what seemed like sorrow became construction material. Every time the ache was met with softness instead of hardness, something eternal was born. The breaking wasn't waste, it was blueprint. Where no eyes watched, something was being mended from the inside. Those quiet moments sculpted patience, sharpened empathy, and carved out space for wisdom that couldn't be taught, only lived. The depth now present isn't from study, it's from surviving with an open heart. These aren't just people who know how to lead. They know how to feel. They know what pain smells like, what silence tastes like, and that gives them an edge the world can't manufacture. A quiet power, a steady light, not loud, but lasting. So when favor begins to follow them, let it be known. It did not arrive overnight. It did not appear because of luck or charm. It was forged in shadowed valleys, paid for in the currency of sorrow. And now, what once leaked from wounded hearts is emerging as wisdom, as clarity, as direction. What once soaked pillowcases now waters growth. The shift that's coming was never sudden. It was sown long ago. Those moments when no one saw the suffering. That's when the roots took hold. That's when the foundation deepened. And now, what was invisible will be undeniable, not because it needs to be seen, but because it can no longer be hidden. There are those who lend their belief before proof, who keep showing up, even after everything they depended on collapses. They give their loyalty freely, not because it's been earned, but because they refuse to become hardened by disappointment. They place their trust like roots in uncertain soil, not for ease, but because they know deep things grow where control ends. They extended patience to people who fractured that trust, who vanished when presence mattered most. They stood in spaces where honesty wasn't reciprocated, where silence followed vulnerability. And even then, they didn't close their hearts. They kept choosing belief, not in perfection, but in possibility. But it wasn't just people they held faith in. They surrendered their timeline, their expectations, and their understanding to something they couldn't fully explain. When clarity blurred and logic failed, they stayed committed to something bigger. They followed whispers in the absence of direction and chose forward even when nothing around them confirmed the path. It's not the kind of trust that's formed in calm seasons. It's the kind that forms in chaos, when everything is shifting and nothing is secure. That kind of trust doesn't ask for answers. It leans into uncertainty and calls it growth. It lives beyond convenience. It's the kind of courage that walks through the fog without demanding a flashlight. Every step forward came at a cost, not in comfort lost, but in control surrendered. Not in applause withheld, but in loneliness endured. They stepped when doubt roared. They moved when it would have been easier to pause, not because it made sense, but because something ancient in their spirit said, "Go." There were no maps, no safety nets, no cheering crowds, just decisions made in the dark, and hope chosen over fear, again and again. And this hope didn't feel soft, it was gritty, it was forged through silence, anchored through storms, and reinforced by every unanswered prayer that still met with obedience. Dear brothers and sisters, may the peace of God fill your hearts today. I come to remind you of a profound truth. Our lives are firmly established in God's divine purpose, untouched by the fleeting worries of this world. As Scripture tells us, "Give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap." Luke 6:38. Like the mighty oak whose roots are planted deep in rich soil, our foundation is anchored in God's eternal truth. Every move we make, every stand we take, is upheld by His enduring strength. Today, you have the opportunity to participate in this divine blessing. By clicking the Super Thank You button and offering a gift of $100, you will sow into a harvest that will return to you many times over in God's abundant grace. That trust wasn't painless, it separated them. It confused others. It looked like recklessness from the outside, like surrender from the inside. And it demanded sacrifice, the kind that isn't seen or celebrated. But they didn't retreat. They didn't mute their belief just because life didn't explain itself. Now, having trusted through uncertainty, they've been prepared to carry more. Not just more blessing, but more weight, more clarity, more responsibility. And it won't inflate them, it will ground them, because their strength wasn't built in the spotlight. It was proven in the unseen. They didn't give up when logic ran out. They didn't detach when everything went quiet. They held on, not with clenched fists, but open hands. And now, that steady trust, the one that cost them everything, is becoming the very reason they can be trusted with even more. Many confuse visibility with value, assuming progress is only proven when it's paraded. They believe transformation must come with a trophy, that favor wears a name tag, and elevation arrives only with applause. But there are those who know a rarer rhythm, who understand that the most sacred shifts unfold away from sight, far from recognition. The turning point wasn't a celebration, It was a silence so thick it echoed. Not a victory lap, but a quiet, personal reckoning. While others gathered praise, you were peeling back layers in solitude. Not to impress, but to be honest. You weren't applauded into growth. You wrestled into it, deep in the backdrop, far from center stage. While the world sprinted toward platforms, you sat with your patterns. You didn't chase a spotlight. You searched for alignment. In the empty hours where no one called your name, you were being forged. The absence of attention became the space where your foundation was restructured. You weren't overlooked. You were being made invisible for a purpose. Your obscurity was not punishment, it was preparation. The seasons of being unseen were the very chapters that shaped your resilience. You weren't being delayed, you were being deepened. And in that depth, you lost the appetite for performance. You grew tired of pretending. You stopped editing yourself to fit expectations that never understood your essence. There, in the quiet undoing, you didn't become someone new. You remembered who you always were. The real reward wasn't a change in scenery, it was a change in self. You stopped needing reassurance to know you were right where you belonged. You didn't crave confirmation because you'd found conviction. You didn't trade shadows for the spotlight. You carried your own flame into the world. You stood through silence that could have broken you. You listened when there was no voice answering back. You stayed steady when the ground beneath you trembled. And in that unseen obedience, your roots grew deeper than any platform could reach. The light that finds you now is not your beginning. It's your revealing. You don't need to adjust your stance. You don't need to perform now that the curtains are lifting. You are not a product of attention. You are a product of endurance. You won't flinch in this new season because you didn't skip the silent one. The journey didn't inflate you. It refined you. You arrive whole, not hollow. And if they ask where you've been, tell them you were in the places they never bothered to look. In the process, they tried to avoid. In the shadows, they dismissed. You didn't gather strength from shiny things. You drew it from surrender, from silence, from soil. The substance of your light was built in the dark, and that's why it won't burn out. It wasn't given. It was grown, and that makes all the difference. Let's be honest. This path hasn't been light. Loss has followed like a shadow, showing up in moments you least expected, pulling things from your grasp before you had time to understand why they were there to begin with. There were days you watched connections slip away, not in explosions, but in silence. People you trusted, roles you poured into, hopes you held with both hands, all dissolved without explanation. And the grief didn't ask permission, it just settled in. Time evaporated. Not just minutes on a clock, but entire chapters spent trying, waiting, mending, believing. You gave more than you'll ever admit. And in return, there were delays, dead ends, and an ache that no one else could measure. You lost beliefs you once built your world on. You lost a version of yourself who still thought everything would go as planned. The one who laughed quicker, the one who didn't flinch so often. And still, through the unraveling, something unspoken was unfolding. Behind the scenes of every goodbye, every detour, every dream that dissolved into thin air, there was a silent preparation. What looked like depletion was actually design. What fell apart wasn't punishment, it was placement. The space that emptiness created wasn't a void, it was a clearing. Not everything that vanished was meant to remain. Some absences protected you. Some endings rerouted you before destruction could settle in. What you thought was being taken was actually being traded. Not in cruelty, but in wisdom. You weren't being reduced. You were being rerouted into something rare, Now look again, not at what walked away, but at what arrived afterward. You gained clarity that no comfort could have taught. You earned insight that couldn't be found in peace, only in pressure. Your awareness is sharper. You now notice what you used to ignore. You recognize patterns. You don't force what resists. You don't chase what doesn't nourish. Now, you carry stillness, not the kind that comes from a quiet room, but the kind that holds in the middle of chaos. You've learned that not every door deserves a knock, that solitude is not exile, but preservation. You've come to understand that being left behind sometimes means being left in peace. You don't reach the same anymore. You don't hold the same. You release quickly, you discern faster. Because your losses taught you, value is not measured in what you keep, but in what you no longer cling to. And no, you didn't walk away untouched. You carry the marks of what didn't last, but you also carry the wisdom of what couldn't be taken. You've traded ease for endurance, comfort for calling, shallow ties for spiritual depth. This isn't just survival. This is ascension. Not because everything worked out, but because you did. Because you didn't let the breaking bury you. You let it build you. And what you walk with now cannot be counted in things. It's rooted in who you've become. So when the question comes, how are you still standing, still steady, still whole? Say this: I lost a lot, but what remained became more valuable than what was taken. And what I carry now can't be lost again. Because you didn't just live through the loss, you rose through it. They often praise the glow without knowing the furnace it came from. They see the stability, the steady gaze, the unwavering step, and assume it was always this way, as if the ease they now witness was not carved through resistance. They admire the quiet strength, but miss the soundless breaking that shaped it. They call it grace, unaware of the grit it grew from. They notice what stands today, not what nearly collapsed. They see the outcome, not the private unravelings that almost made you walk away. They see the confidence, not the nights you questioned your own worth. They see the presence you carry now, not the days you disappeared into yourself, unsure if you'd ever rise again. What they don't see is the road that wasn't paved, the weight you bore without applause, the moments you showed up, not because you felt strong, but because surrender wasn't an option. They don't know about the decisions made in isolation, the sacrifices made in silence, the choices that cost you comfort but preserved your calling. They weren't there when you had to navigate in the dark. No clear direction, no backup plan. Just the whisper of conviction guiding your next move. They didn't hear the inner dialogue you had to overcome, the persistent doubts you silenced with faith, too fragile to speak, but strong enough to stand on. They missed the thresholds you crossed while carrying a quiet ache that no one acknowledged. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Their assumptions cannot rewrite your journey. You owe no clarity to those who only arrived for the victory scene. The ones who endured the unknown don't owe their story to the spectators. What was built in obscurity doesn't need to be explained in daylight. This wasn't a case of fortune smiling at you. This was fire, teaching you how to hold form without burning out. This was forged, not gifted. Every fall was a refinement. Every pause, a recalibration. Every detour, a redirection towards something weightier, truer, more aligned. Nothing was handed. Nothing was fast-tracked. You declined shortcuts not because you didn't see them, but because you understood that real worth is never rushed. What you now carry isn't just the result. It's the evidence of endurance. It's the legacy of internal wars that never made headlines but changed everything. When people look now and wonder how you made it, they are witnessing the quiet triumph of resilience, the depth behind your stillness, the strength beneath your softness. They see presence, but they don't see the persistence it took to become whole. So stand as you are, without apology. Wear your story not as a burden, but as proof that you were never just surviving. You were being forged for something sacred. The cost was steep, but so is the calling. What you paid cannot be measured in what was lost, but in what can never be taken from you. Dear brothers and sisters, may the peace of God fill your hearts today. I come to remind you of a profound truth. Our lives are firmly established in God's divine purpose, untouched by the fleeting worries of this world. As Scripture tells us, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. Luke 6:38. Like the mighty oak whose roots are planted deep in rich soil, our foundation is anchored in God's eternal truth. Every move we make, every stand we take, is upheld by His enduring strength. Today, you have the opportunity to participate in this divine blessing. By clicking the Super Thank You button and offering a gift of $20, you will sow into a harvest that will return to you many times over in God's abundant grace. Not everyone who stands in the light was placed there by comfort or chance. Some are standing only because they refused to fall when everything pushed them to the edge. The strength they now carry wasn't inherited. It was earned through choices no one applauded and faith no one could measure. This moment, this breakthrough, didn't arrive on a silver road. It was carved out of refusal. Refusal to let despair take root, to let the silence define the truth, to let weariness become surrender. The peace now visible wasn't handed out. It was pieced together over time, rebuilt from the remains of disappointment and delay. What anchors you now didn't come from certainty. It came from tension, from the war between giving up and holding on, from those days where every step forward felt like dragging 100 invisible weights. From those nights, you had no proof, no promise, only a pull in your soul that whispered, "Keep going." This foundation wasn't built by shortcuts. No steps were skipped. No masks were worn. No compromises were made. While others chose comfort, you chose conviction. While some reached for fast gain, you held out for what was real. You stayed loyal to something invisible, something others couldn't see, but you could feel deep in your chest. And now, what surrounds you is not luck, it's legacy. Not accident, it's alignment. This new ground was paved with your old pain. Each time you refused to retreat, a piece of your purpose was laid in place. Every no you received became a gatekeeper to a better yes. Every delay was a disguised direction. You gave what most would withhold. You showed up when it would have been easier to disappear. You believed when belief cost you something. You gave energy without applause, showed grace when you could have grown cold, and trusted a path that offered no previews. This is why the favor on your life isn't random. It's recognition. It's not just about what you've gained. It's about who you've become. And that becoming is the real blessing. The depth you now walk with, the vision you now carry, the compassion you now lead with, it was all formed in the places no one else saw. So stand without shrinking. Step forward without apology. Let your presence stretch wide, not from pride, but from clarity. The time you poured, the pain you survived, the hope you guarded when everything seemed to fall apart. It wasn't wasted. It was invested. You don't have to explain this glow. You don't need to justify your joy. You don't owe anyone the backstory to your rise. What rests on your life is the result of obedience, not opinion. And now that it's your season, walk through every open space with the assurance of someone who earned it in silence. The power you now carry was forged, not gifted. And that's what makes it unstoppable. You didn't just reach this moment, you became it. Let them witness the strength. But remember, the real miracle wasn't the arrival, it was the endurance. And that is why you are blessed beyond what they'll ever understand.